So the time has come once again to delve into Super PKR World. Despite Mario's perilous journey up until now, things are only going to become more vast. In fact, that in and of itself is basically the theme of World 4. Levels that go on longer than they really should. Difficulty-wise, World 4 is another step up. I tend to consider this world the last with challenges comparable to official Mario games. After this one, things start to delve purely more into the ROM hack or fan game side of things. Regardless of that, though, time to delve in and see just what this first level has in store. Ah, 4-1, a product of a very tired PKR, whom tried to sleep longer but ended up waking up and staying up much earlier than usual. What this resulted in is a stage that takes some inspiration from the Desert Pipe style levels from Mario Bros. 3 and takes things a bit too far. This entire first area is a giant pipe maze, but thankfully there are at least a couple of different paths that can be taken. Should you not find the need of power-ups, however, only one path will let you escape. Every nook and cranny has something to offer, even if it's only a few coins, so it may not be a bad idea to inspect what looks like a dead end a little more closely in case it has something secret. Regardless of all that, though, this is still one of my least favorite levels I made for this world. It goes on too long for how tight the actual gameplay gets. The ceiling never really gets any higher up, so if you're not using crouch jumps yet, you'd better get on that. Otherwise, dodging some situations as anything other than small Mario is a recipe for disaster. At least levels like this do have the usual benefit that after a couple of plays, the correct path tends to be memorized, so any aimless meandering can be prevented. Not that I consider that good design, but it is at least better. Either way, the big thing to try and find in this earlier portion is this leaf power-up right here. Having a tail handy will allow you to take a fairly major shortcut in this maze segment. The tricky part is keeping the leaf, as this is the only one that can be obtained. The shortcut is basically the reward for exploring and playing well. Tired as I was, I at least wanted to make sure exploring this maze had some rewarding aspects to it. Heck, the tail is actually extremely useful for taking out the particular enemy set I chose to fill this segment. Naturally, I wanted to show both paths to an extent in this recording, especially since the main path has a pseudo-dragon coin to pick up. If you decide to take on this stage, keep these paths in mind and choose whichever you prefer. Carefully gathering the leaf for the shortcut, or just rushing ahead full blast with no power at all. Without the tail handy, bombs end up being the primary tool for accessing secrets or the intended path in this maze. Thinking on it now in hindsight, I should have made each path leading to things such as another power-up box or big coins, accessible with the tail too. It would further reward the player and speed up this area a bit. Either way, when handling bombs, you need to be careful of their fuse. Try not to stomp on a bomb right away, or you may not have time to get it to your destination before it explodes. This also gets tricky, as if you just let them walk, fire bars may light their fuse on you early. Those fire bars are really the worst part of this stage. They get in the way and force the player to slow down often. Probably could have stood to place a few less of those there past me. The last obstacle to get out of this mess is one final kick of a bomb. You'll probably want to make sure the nearby spike is dealt with so it's not bombarding you with projectiles like this when you're trying to get your bomb to its destination. With that done, however, you're free! Oh, that's just the checkpoint location. Yeah, this level has a second half! Totally a great decision, yeah? Well, at least the second portion is much shorter and fast-paced. I suppose I thought of it as a breather after dealing with the maze. This section is actually just a straight-up rompy little diversion. I introduce a couple of elements, such as the tornadoes, and bring the chain chomps and pokies back for a bit of fun. But you can probably get away with hold right strats on this one. I did at least include some fun little things to play around with, such as this entire section of blocks with a Koopa shell to destroy them if you so please. Naturally, there's going to be a secret in here too if you spend the time on it. And there's even a star to reward you if you maintain your bigness at the upcoming pyramid. You know, just stuff like that to make sure the player stays entertained, as well as giving them some precious one-ups to get through this super world. But other than that, just watch out for how certain enemies interact with tornadoes, and you should be fine. Emphasizing just how much shorter this area is, this star run wraps it up nicely. Other than spending a little time on the remaining pseudo-dragon coins, there's really not a lot left here. With that said, though, this is just the first level of 5, and it was beefy! The remaining ones do not get any shorter. Heck, they did not even get more straightforward, so strap in for some pain. Either way, let's wrap this one up. You can fly up here since, you know, Mario Maker lets you walk above things if they're on the top tile like that. Gather up that big coin. There's another one to be found in this room right before the goal as well, so, you know, just keep your eye out for any little secret like this. Because you never know, these coins might be crucial for your survival. Well, here it is! Short of the soft lock in 2-B, this is the most flawed stage in all of Super PKR World. I have no idea what happened with this one. The design flaws are multiple, and they cause some pretty substantial issues for far too many of the individuals that play it. I would simply love to fix this level, but alas, Super Mario Maker 2 lacks any sort of hotfix solution for when uploaded levels have a couple of bugs to iron out. Conceptually, I do enjoy this level, and I'm happy with how it came out visually as well. But the design flaws take center stage unless someone actually plays the level exactly as intended for once. The main culprit here is my shockingly poor design in this subworld. What you're supposed to be doing is building a bridge in the main world, then going backwards through this subworld to return and cross the bridge. However, Past Me was a dunce and completely failed to prevent people from going right in the subworld instead of left. While under normal circumstances this would be fine, as it just means they take a different path to build the second bridge, the issue arises from the fact the obstacles were designed with coming from the intended direction in mind. On top of some of the obstacles being much harder to avoid when going backwards like this, there's also unavoidable damage caused by this dry bone sitting on top of the warp pipe. So if you come out of it in the wrong direction, it hits you immediately. Such a tragic number of problems caused by what could have been fixed with a single, well-placed semi-solid platform to stop players from going the wrong way. Yeesh. It also does not help that I forgot to put an arrow pointing to the left in the subworld in the first place, causing most people to just make the usual assumption to just hold right. So that's really my bad too. Just sheesh. Way to mess up royally past me. Instead of the aforementioned semi-solid, I instead tried to do this wacky on-off switch setup, which, on top of just not working properly, is also far more overcomplicated than necessary. There's at least one small benefit to the on-off blocks, though, as they can be used to get rid of the boos hiding in the floors and ceilings should their paths take them into a switch block. Enemy placement definitely got pretty nuts in this level. While it's far from the most difficult level in the pack, the very cramped situations all these invincible enemies like boos cause can get rather tedious. Usually my intention is to slow the player down so they can't just run at top speed without knowing the stage first, but I can occasionally overdo it like this. Special shoutouts to this Thwomp section especially, as dodging the last two confused players so badly that it reinforced their choice to deal with the force-damaged dry bones rather than deal with the Thwomps twice. On hindsight, yes, that maneuver needed to avoid damage there is a bit too tight for World 4, but I'm still a bit surprised that the intended strat was that tricky to figure out. Either way, though, with the first 2 bridges built, a precious checkpoint is finally gathered. The second half of this level puts even more focus on combat. More Super Bros and troublesome individuals will pop up at this part of the level, as it's a bit shorter since you only need to make 1 return trip. Hey, you gotta throw in some jokes every now and then in them levels, yeah? Considering the oversight leading to the villainous dry bones in the first half, though, it kind of puts an unintended spin on this little moment that I'd only intended just to be a bit silly. With that said, remember our dear friend crouch jumping? It's back! And more aggressive with its need than ever! Seriously, quickly hold down just before jumping, or the player character's toast. Or at the very least, minorly inconvenienced. If you held onto a fire flower this far into the stage, the rest should be as good as 1. The conveyor room was the last of the really tight platforming. Just grab your key off the Sumo Bro and make a dash for the end. I really lament this stage. It could have been a highlight for World 4 had it not been for the subworld design issues. Sure, a few less enemies here and there would have helped too, but yeah. I just enjoy this one thematically a lot with the spooky basement and whatnot. Oh well. One could say it is a learning experience and to just move on, I guess. Much like with the other Fortress stages in Super PKR World, Boom Boom waits for you at the end. His room layout is quite simple this time around, though. He may get a couple of boxes for shelter and for jump shenanigans, but I mean, it's Boom Boom! Just unlock him and toss him aside as ever. Alright, so I had a very specific goal when it came to this world's bonus stage. I thought about the Desert Night theme and its wind shenanigans, and like a reasonable person, I figured, well, wind is kinda lame. Except when it's boosting you forward. Only the new Super Mario Bros. U theme has the wind constantly pushing you forward, so that choice was made for me. But this coupled well with the second ingredient, the Super Acorn. Now, admittedly, unlike, say, a certain bomber of the blue variety, Mario physics do not play as nicely with boosting wind. But I really wanted to mix these 2 elements together, and I feel I kind of succeeded here. The first half definitely more so than the second half. Either way, try to hang on to that Super Acorn, as its glide will help everything go so much easier. The first half of the level wants you to get used to gliding around in the wind, offering secret rooms like this if you decide to be a little more daring with the gliding. The best advice I can offer in regards to the acorn is doing little left and right wiggles if you want to descend in place. This drops you far more slowly than releasing and repressing the A button. Naturally, while some of the obstacles in the first half may seem intimidating, they can all be done without the Super Acorn should you get hit. Just make sure to use any helpful nearby terrain like the small hill earlier, and leap! You can get some crazy distance off of a jump in this theme, especially with the mid-air twirl, so have some fun with it! This brings us to the second half of the level, though, and this one is an entirely different beast. The goal here is to get the player accustomed to lengthier glides with the Super Acorn, so you really gotta learn about descending in place, and the influence holding forward has on your flight speed. The overall goal is to collect the 5 red coins, but the path splits in a couple of different places, so it takes multiple trips. Pay close attention to the coin trails. They'll not only tell you where the splits are, but they'll try to inform you where to pop the Z button, so you can rise up and land onto some higher platforms. If you find you're falling behind a trail, hold forward for a bit to speed up. Or, if you're following the trail closely, just put the D-pad back into neutral, and this will get you to fly at a slightly slower speed. Once you get accustomed to the quirks of the Super Acorn gliding, this section should end up feeling quite easy. Until then, however, if you're not doing something right, it'll feel punishing and difficult. Should everything be done correctly, the 5 coins can be gathered in a minimum of 3 trips through the gliding paths. Tackle them in whatever order you want, but once the coins have been gathered to make the needed key, the prize of this bonus level awaits! Should you already be pretty good with the Super Acorn upon arriving at this stage, there's potential for a pretty substantial life profit. Most people will need those lives for future worlds, so stocking up definitely seems like a good idea. Unless you're already at 99, in which case, you do you, as they say. The final bonus room offers a bit more fun to be had gliding around for your prizes, and it's perfectly safe, too. This is one of my favorite of the bonus stages. While it can be infuriating if you do not fully grasp the acorn gliding, I just feel it came out super well thematically, and does a good job offering a non-standard experience for those who venture off the beaten path. In terms of what I look for in these bonus levels, this one fits the bill nicely. With a level title like that, it's pretty clear what obstacle's gonna show up, yeah? Naturally, being a desert world, it made sense to throw in an Angry Sun stage. But World 4 being World 4, just a straight-up run with an Angry Sun would have been too straightforward, so more will make itself known later. I had a particular idea in mind with the first portion of this level. I wanted it to be something you pass through twice, with each visit being fairly different in terms of progression, thus making use of the on-off blocks. The goal was for the first trip to be a bit slower, letting the sun have more time to be dangerous, while the second trip would introduce some tricky enemies to deal with, but allow you to jump past slower obstacles. In this regard, I feel this level worked pretty well. There are actually a few tricks you can do with the Angry Sun that I didn't really delve into with this level, perhaps at a later date if I do more work with Mario Maker. The big thing with the Angry Sun is it works as a fire source, so this means some elements, such as bombs, interact with the sun passing through them. Bomb fuses get lit, ice blocks get melted. You can really get quite clever with this, otherwise rather mundane element. Interactions between elements is honestly one of the best aspects of Super Mario Maker. This time around, the on-off gimmick applies to both parts of the level, not just the main world. The subworld also features a return trip altered by these blocks. I decided to have a bit of a Mario Bros. 2 flair with this one by bringing in the appropriate mushroom power-up. It really is a shame that the Super Mario Bros. 2 gameplay is restricted to a power-up rather than a whole new theme, but I guess I'm not terribly surprised. This section's kind of similar to, like, the pyramid stages and whatnot that you'd see in Mario Bros. 2 as well, with the slow and further descent into the sandy tombs. Either way, the mushroom itself did not get to be around anywhere near as long as I would have liked, because Past Me is a klutz and keeps on messing up this recorded run of World 4! My goodness, Past Me, please! Please stop messing up so much! At least it's easy enough to picture how this would work with this Mario Bros. 2 mushroom. Any bombable walls could be easily handled by thrown bombs, dry bones could actually be defeated for good by picking up and throwing them, and so forth. Really, as long as you don't rush blindly to the bottom, this descent should not be so bad. The real issue is at the bottom itself. Oh yes. Oh yes. Those who have played Mario Bros. 2 know exactly what that is. The cursed key. Yeah. Turns out the ascent back up is not just going to be slightly altered by on-off blocks, but rather much different due to the perpetual hounding that is Phanto. Surprise! Both of the aggressive enemies that chase after you are in this stage. This is at least vaguely hinted at with the mention of a curse in the level's title, and the appearance of the Mario Bros. 2 mushroom in an underground desert area similar to the aforementioned game. Phanto's AI is considerably more frustrating than most ROM hack implementations here, as he's not as aggressive as one would expect. He homes in a sort of loose fashion where he'll choose to slowly swoop around at you rather than rush in at top speed. This ultimately makes the deadly mask less predictable, so be very careful when moving past it. I suppose while the escape continues, I should mention the specifics of the Mario Bros. 2 mushroom. This power-up lets you do such things as digging through clouds as though they were sand, pick up and throw enemies, as well as simply ride on any enemy you are allowed to pick up. Naturally, enemies such as Phanto, or anything with a spike on its head, are exempt from being stood on. Another ability is the super jump from the game itself, where you hold duck to charge up an extra high jump to let you reach tricky ledges. This ability set leads to a lot of people designing levels around bullet and bonsai bills as a means of transportation, so there are an absolute ton of those levels out there by now. I kept things simple this time around, as I wanted the level to allow the player to try out the more basic abilities before trying to do anything crazy with it. We do not need any Luigis riding across oceans on an egg this time around. With the switch flipped, however, we're back to the first section of the level, now with some changed up obstacles, such as a floating pokey. If you want to collect all the totally not dragon coins in this level, you only get one chance. You require the Mario Bros. 2 mushroom to gather one under a cloud in the middle of this outdoor section. Unsurprisingly, Past Me mucks it up again! I do like to try and slip in little speedrun strats here and there when appropriate for my levels. An example is this slowly moving lift. If you jump for the right side of it, you can absolutely make it to the switch block here without having to wait, thus letting you save multiple seconds. Neat little tricks like this add replay value, and are something I call good design rather than cheese. Cheese is usually things like going above something that was meant to be a wall, or an unintended shell jump that lets you skip most of the level. You know, things like that. Sadly, due to Past Me's bumbling once again, the top of the flagpole is out of reach. You've got to reach the end with the Mario Bros. 2 mushroom for such a prize. Now for one of the strongest contenders for my favorite level in the whole Super World, and not just for its eyebrow-raising name. Thankfully, this seems to be a bit of a consensus, too, as those who have reached this far have often left praise for this one. Even the very start has design aspects I'm happy with. The first screen showing the Mega Spikes will pierce through standard blocks while stopping when impacting a hard block. Then the next screen taking that a step further by offering a bonus for noticing the bit about hard blocks. Between that and plenty of visual cues, such as double arrows to indicate when you should run full blast, and this level should be pretty sight-readable. This level also has a nice mixture of fast-paced, quick dodging with coin trails and visual indicators, as well as slower, more tight platforming bits. Naturally, being a World 4 stage, it's a bit on the long side, but that's to be expected by now. The outdoor visuals were something I really wanted to do with this stage, using the yellow block semi-solids to make the makeshift pyramids mentioned in the level name. While their design is primitive due to the limited available blocks to choose from, it gives the level something unique to let it stick in the mind. Well, something other than just a bunch of mega spikes at least. Thus, the thematic of the level is made. You go from pyramid to pyramid, traveling both inside and outside of them to reach where Wendy is hiding. The interior sections tend to have bursts of sudden action to keep you on your toes, while the outside is more methodical, more careful. The level itself is a bit tough, but if you keep your eye out for question blocks, there are plenty of power-ups to find. It should be said that I do hand out capes pretty frequently in the Super Mario World themed levels. When designed carefully, a cape is not as level-breaking as in its source game. It's especially useful in castle stages like this, where enemies such as Dry Bones roam. I like to give the player the opportunity to do some skips, just not the entire level, so being able to skip a moving platform or two in the outdoor sections is totally intentional. Now, the cape does have one cost. It is very easy to unintentionally start flying in the dash segments. If you do not want to headbutt a Mega Spike, do a quick turnaround to get rid of some speed before jumping. It's a little awkward, but much like back in 3-3 with the Super Acorn, sometimes slight inconveniences are the cost for great powers. This last area is definitely a doozy. Easily the toughest part of the stage coming right up is Wendy's pyramid. The entire place is lined with traps, from bullet bill shooters to bomb launchers to roaming Koopa Troopas. The goal with this pyramid was to create a single set piece the player has to roam around for a while, performing small tasks to delve further into it before ultimately finding what is needed to move on. Set pieces are probably one of the hardest parts of level design, especially with such a small selection of elements and blocks. Making something that both looks cool and plays well is super tough. This pyramid's a pretty okay example of doing both right, but it's certainly possible to do better. Ultimately, the biggest issue I had when making this was the size of the pyramid. Not that it was too big, but rather too small. With the very limited screen real estate Super Mario Maker 2 offers, you can only make such a thing so big, and it would need to be considerably larger to add more breathing room to each segment. The end result is a bunch of small tasks like on-off switches or chucking a bomb in a rather cramped space. I would have loved to have each floor have more breathing room to add more actual platforming elements, but that simply is not meant to be in this engine. With the P-switch from the bottom floor, however, you can make your way back to the top to enter the warp pipe. I'm quite thankful as usual for the multiple checkpoints being a thing in this engine, as this stage absolutely needs one after the pyramid puzzle. Wendy was an odd Koopa to work with in terms of a boss room. Perhaps one of the game's power-ups would work better, but as it stands, I can only think of making the room smaller overall and adding some obstacles to keep you moving. The end result is just waiting for an opportunity to strike Wendy the first time, then spin jumping on her shell to get easy, successive hits, preventing any further rings from being spawned. Really doesn't result in much of a boss fight, but hey, it's something. Have some fireworks, that's it! World 4 is complete! While World 4 ended up being quite the mixed bag due to the rough start of 4-1 and 4-2, I feel it ramped up better and better as the world went on. It's nice to have a world end on a high note moving into World 5, which, as the clouds were alluding to at the end of 4-4, World 5 is going to be the Sky World. Now, I would say that is it for this time, but due to the failures of my past self, I have some little extras to show off first. So let us take a quick dip into levels past and have a little look-see, shall we? Alright, first up we have the incorrect path of 4-2. Showing it this way really makes it glaringly obvious how badly I mucked up locking this right-hand path, but here it is, I guess. The enemy placement gets continually more inconvenient the further you go, but with the nature of the average Mario Maker 2 level's quality, it's not like that alone's going to help someone figure out they're going the wrong way. Other than the obvious force damage dry bones issue, the boos on the floors and ceilings, and especially the sumo bro, really get in the way should anyone try to go in this direction. See, the intended path has you above the sumo bro from the start, which is actually rather ideal for either sneaking in a head stomp or for slipping past without too much trouble. Being beneath a sumo bro is much more of an issue, as it's too easy to jump either into the enemy itself or a hammer dropping in from off-screen. With that out of the way, though, all that remains is to head up through the pipe and meet the ultimate fate of my mistakes. It is still a little crazy to me, though, that upon the force damage making it painfully clear this was not the intended path, people just kept going this way. Over and over again. Oh well. This next one's a quick double whammy of showing the bits that past me failed to accomplish in the main recording, as well as showing a speed strat here in 4-3. Of note, you can also skip the slow-moving lift on the first pass-through as well. It just requires a nearly pixel-perfect corner jump from the red blocks below. But for now, do that super jump, grab the top of the flagpole, and that's about it for 4-3. Last up, we have a couple quick tidbits in 4-4, including a secret one-up that was so hidden I forgot it existed! Just a little reward for venturing to a dangerous spot, I suppose. I also wanted to quickly demonstrate just what happens when you go to skip this major door section with the cape. Not only does it work, but you also get rewarded for it with another one-up. So, fly away! provided you avoided damage long enough to earn that power-up. But that is all for now, so see you next time in World 5. Take care now.